Hello there, welcome to the PlugBox Podcast, where we discuss all things EV and renewables and generally have a damn good chinwag. Anyway, on with the show. And just
Mr.
like that,
Pete?
we're live.
Absolutely. All good?
I'd like to say it was easy, but I had a few problems, but, getting old.
Yeah, well, teething troubles with the first time and everything.
The first time. As I said, definitely be one for gathering dust in the archives.
Yeah. I mean, I got a few buttons coming up and a few... Do you want to activate the microphone and all that? But nonetheless, we're here.
Yes.
We're here and we're live.
First one. So actually, should probably have some preamble.
Please do. Come on, Pete. Who are we? What are we doing?
Who are we? So this is the first PlugBox podcast. And I say podcast, even though it's on the wonderful medium of stereo, which I'm still discovering. And I say podcast, even though we've not got an intro, we've not got an audio tag.
Yet. Let's be ambitious.
Yet. We've not got a podcast, but as you say, we will. We will.
So we thought we're dipping into stereo. We've never tried it before. Seems like a good platform to at least start this adventure on. So it's well spotted finding it. Let's see how we do on here. Of course, we're going to branch out further, I think. We're looking at YouTube as well. We have a placeholder in YouTube as well. So look out for this to be reposted on there.
We need to get to that 100 subscribers, don't we? And then we can get the PlugBox URL.
Hang on, are you asking for people to like and subscribe, Pete?
Like, comment, subscribe.
Oh, he's in there. Good lad.
I've been rehearsing.
All right. Have you? Yeah, sounds like it. Come on then. What are we here to talk about?
So we wanted to talk about sort of all things renewables. And from my side, we're car guys. We won't talk about the thingy.
No, avoid that. Yeah, stay away from that.
But we're both involved in cars, and also are kind of interested in renewables and renewable tech and anything that runs on electric, really, or makes electric.
I never stopped to think, actually, but between us, how many years have we been involved in cars?
Oh.
I've got a few years under my hat, I'm not going to lie. Getting on for
I think you've got it by a nose on me.
Yeah, I got maybe 16 years.
Oh, I'm a fledgling then. I think maybe six.
Yeah, but between us, that's a healthy number.
Yes, it is.
It is. Yeah. So, as Pete says, all things certainly electric, sustainable, automotive, renewable, all areas of interest for us. I think we'd agree.
Do we also need to cover that you're called Pete and I'm called Pete?
That's true enough. So,
and this is the PlugBox Podcast.
It is the PlugBox Podcast.
It's all the P's.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's going to get confusing for anybody listening to this. But Pete and Pete are members of the PlugBox team and starting a podcast. So what's on the agenda for today then? What are we going to touch upon?
Oh, agenda, very formal. I don't know. We've got to get into it, right? Because I'm, I don't know, just frothing at the mouth is the Porsche Taycan Cross Turismo, right? And it's just, the amount of time I've spent on the configurator. And I think my high score so far is 175 grand. I think, when I've ticked all the boxes.
Right. Okay. Let's not beat around the bush. It is a tasty looking car. It is a good looking car.
One of my dream cars, and I think a lot of people are the same if they're into cars, is a fast wagon, right? And an RS6, and just to have an estate car or a wagon, depending on where you're from, that has got no business being so powerful. And I think that's why everyone loves an RS6 and, like the E63S.
But you can justify it to the wife or girlfriend because it's practical. It's an estate car.
And that. But
it
as you say,
space.
the Cross Turismo, like the Taycan, I think it's quite cool. And it's good that Porsche are doing it. And Oh, there's so many. I don't know if it's just you, but driving around.
Look, they are everywhere, but each time I see one, I still don't salivate. Not when I compare it to what they've done with Cross Turismo. I'm sure it's a great car and probably a great EV, and it has great numbers, but it doesn't give me the wow factor when I see it. When I hear it, that's a different story. Its speaker is phenomenal. Their design sound is great, but to look at, not so much. This changes everything.
Yeah, as I say, I've already spent far too much time on the configurator, but I think the cool thing, and again, is it's having almost like a halo car or a desirable car, right? Like, there's some people that are maybe not so into EVs as we are, but I don't know objectively how you can look at that kind of car and not think it's cool or not want one. Do you know what I mean? Like, we've all seen like the videos and some of the reviews of like the Turbo S, which let's not get into the name, but it's like 680 horsepower, 3 and a bit seconds to 60, and we all know that Porsche sandbag. But I think the Cross Turismo starts from about 80,000 in the UK, which is
just short of 80,000, but up to well over 170, 180,000, which is
175 was my high score. As I said, red interior, Mamba green exterior, gold wheels.
Oh, that's
compass.
The only combination.
Can we talk about the compass?
Yes, please do. So this comes with an optional off-road pack, and this is not an off-road car, but the very idea that it could be is just awesome. Gravel capability. I mean, who doesn't need that when driving up to their manor house? When you've got that gravel drive, you're just going to need it. Let's be honest.
Yeah, I think Porsche are quick to stress that it's not a crossover. Obviously, I think everyone knows at this point the next Macan is going to be an EV, but as you say, it's almost like an Audi A6 all-road, right? Or that kind of car. Just a little bit jacked up and, just a bit more beefy, especially the off-road pack. But, the compass. Like, I've never got the Sport Chrono package on Porsches. Like, the amount of people having a hissy fit about that, but it just seems odd to me to have an analog clock for lap timing or something. I think it's more of a must option that the Porsche dealer doesn't allow you to not tick. But
you don't
a compass
really
on the dash.
But you don't need that. As I said, look, this isn't the first time we've talked about this car because it does strike a tone with both of us. We like it a lot. The compass is just above the Navi unit. It's just above the Navi screen. And you can guarantee that on that Navi screen, there will be a compass. So you've now got 2 compasses. Who needs that? Nobody, but we all want it because why? Well, it's cool. It's great looking.
I might need a brace of compasses.
For when you get lost.
Precisely.
The
Navi doesn't work or Google Maps doesn't work. Well. One can only dream of a gravel driveway paint. But yeah, I think the cool thing, as I say, is it's almost like an aspirational car, right? And as you say, it's kind of practical and it's just cool. Fast wagons are just cool. And it almost doesn't matter that it's electric.
That green colour. All of the press shots that have been released in green, it's just phenomenally good looking. When do you order yours then, Pete? Come on, tell me.
Well, as a tight Yorkshireman, maybe it's a few pennies over my budget, but if my numbers come up on the Euro Millions, you know what I mean? That's got to be the ultimate daily now. Like,
can you order it? Is it actually available? Yes, it is. I'm just scanning down the websites now, and I can see it is on sale now, priced from a cool £79,340. Because for those listening abroad, we are in the UK.
Before options.
And well, you're not going to buy this without options. In fact, you probably can't buy the 79 grand version. You probably have to add something.
No.
Floor mats. You're not going to go down to Halfords once you've got this to get some floor mats, are you? Let's
or fluffy dice.
Yes.
No. Like I said, it's just cool, and to kind of nerd out, one of the cool things, as I said, we're close to cars is the battery tech. So, again, we all know that Porsche have been criticised, especially in the US, about range, and everyone will have an opinion on that. But we know Porsche sandbag, and we know there's real world tests that have been done, by magazines and by influencers that say actually it goes further. But one of the cool things in the battery is actually the anode has some silicon content, which actually is quite cutting edge, and that's why it charges so quickly. Like it's what 270 kilowatts.
270 kilowatts, yeah. So that's the equivalent of 5 to 80% in just over 20 minutes. I mean, I don't know about you, but to be honest, when you're filling up a petrol car these days, by the time you've bought your Costa and your Mars bar, you're almost there 20 minutes anyway, especially the queue.
Yeah. And like I said, maybe they're behind the curve in terms of the range, but let's be honest, it's Porsche's first stab. But from
you don't buy this car, I don't think, for the range. It is a performance vehicle.
Yeah, and like I said, the charge rate is market leading, right? It's just
yes, yeah. So what is the battery size? It must be in excess of 90 kilowatt hours, surely.
93? Is that right?
93. Usable or in total? Now, there's a challenging question and one that often gets asked.
I don't know. I thought, is it 93 and then you can use about 88? I'm having a guess. Hopefully you're going to tell me.
I don't know, is the honest answer.
Yeah. We're falling over the first hurdle. But anyway, anyone can Google it.
We can't know everything about everything. We can't know everything about everything. But I mean, it's a sizable battery pack. It's going to be good for probably over 200 miles as a general rule. Certainly when you're driving at typical UK road speeds.
Yeah.
So, I mean, 200 miles is a... Do go on.
No, I think that's the key thing. I think the Turbo S one, right, maybe is, as you say, is around 200, a little bit below, a little bit above, and obviously it depends on wheels and options and whatever. But that's not really
outside.
Very true, especially in the damp little island off the coast of Europe, where it's often cold. But as you say, it's. I think the Turbo S, obviously, it's great having the party piece, right? But you only get the headline, whatever it is, 680 PS in launch mode. Actually, after launch mode or when launch mode's not engaged or when you're not in Sport Plus, you don't get access to that anyway. So, the 4 or the 4S, when we're talking about the Cross Turismo, is probably the one to have, really. You'll save a bucket of cash. And actually, after those 3 or 4 times you take the wife or the girlfriend out or the kids or your mate to try and impress them, actually, how often do you really use launch control?
I don't think I've ever actually driven a car with launch control. And to be honest, for anybody that's ever driven an EV, you will know that off the line, they are surprisingly quick. Any EV, not a performance EV. You can leave most cars standing at lights. But
not 30, no problem in an EV.
Oh, yes. And 0 to 60 in this car, we're talking about 2.7 seconds. Boost mode, pushing the power up, as I'm reading here, up to 761 horsepower. That's more than most people will ever experience in their lifetime driving a car.
Absolutely. But yeah, cool car. Need to win the Euro Millions. And I'll
it's an aspirational
down the
vehicle,
Porsche dealership.
You're absolutely right. It's aspirational. And it's the sort of car that needs to be in showrooms to make people want to make that change to EV. Because EVs don't have to be dowdy. They're not dowdy. They can be performance vehicles. And as I'm sure we'll come on to in later episodes, they are 100% live-withable. They're very easy to manage.
Well, we both drive EVs, and I can't say I broke down yet.
I'm on my third.
Oof.
Third EV. And I wouldn't go back, honestly speaking. I would not go back.
I think a lot of people will be finding that. And again, that's another one where this vehicle, I guess, shines is, people are going to get it in it partly because of the Porsche brand more than anything. Maybe tax benefits, but we'll talk about that. But they're getting into it because it's a Porsche, right? Not just it's an electric car. And naturally, that will then open the doors to other things, right? I think most people that get this kind of vehicle have maybe got more than one car, and does that then mean they go out and buy another electric car and they show their friends and family, and they like it, and they have a drive, and they're like, "Oh, this is great."
Yeah,
and we've seen that so many times with so many different brands that actually it's just getting people exposed to them. Case in point, Tesla, right? Is people getting them and realise the smooth, the quiet, the quick, and people generally don't go back. There's very few people, I think, that get an EV and then go back to a purely combustion car. So that can only be good, right?
And those that do it regrettably, from what I've seen and read, not because they want to. But yeah, and there's no doubt that Porsche have thrown buckets of money to develop this vehicle. But that technology and that investment will slowly start to water its way down across their brands that they own. Even when they've worked with various manufacturers and suppliers, it will all start to disseminate, and it will become more accessible over time. I'm certain.
Absolutely, and we're already seeing that in the e-tron GT and RS e-tron GT, right, which is based on the same platform as this. So yeah, we're already seeing the march of VW and how they share and cross-pollinate with platforms and whatnot. So can only be good.
I'm sensing a segue there. You've mentioned VW.
Oh,
see how
I think I did that. I think I did that inadvertently. We'll edit it so it sounds planned. We'll do that.
You do that. So VW.
But, well, I was going to say but, like, comment, subscribe.
Absolutely.
I do that properly.
Yeah, well, it will help us, won't it? I think if not everybody's going to like what we say, but maybe a few will. But to help us, please do like and subscribe.
So on the back of that inadvertent segue, I guess the next thing is around all these OEM, cut-off dates and announcements around where we're only going to sell battery electric vehicles from and when we're going to get rid of ICE. And I think it's quite interesting, actually, because I don't know about you, but up until, I don't know, maybe a year or two ago, as we said, we're quite close to cars from an industry point of view. I thought it was going to be regulation that meant eventually most manufacturers in a huff would just give up on ICE because of the regulatory burden, right? Like we've just been talking about Porsche, maybe Porsche and Mercedes, and of course the supercar companies would keep limping on with ICE because it's part of their brand. But for mass market, actually, OEMs would just give up. But I think a stronger driving force now actually is customer demand.
Customer opinion is changing. I think almost country culture is changing. People are now seeing the need to move towards a sustainable future. And whether it's, terrible events in Australia with wildfires and drought and the same on the east coast of the US, I mean, that is driving things for sure. And I think the OEMs are starting to, listen and see to what consumers and customers want in their lives.
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, like most companies, right, they're always chasing that growth market, and there's not that much growth left in ICE, rightly or wrongly.
Oh, sorry, I lost you for a moment there.
Oh, first technical glitch, but I was just saying about the demand for electric cars actually is getting to the point now where people genuinely want them. There is a few models that are not struggling, but they're not selling greatly. But actually, most electric cars across the board, the manufacturers are selling as many as they can make.
They can. I think a lot of them went in with quite conservative volume figures and have been taken by surprise. There obviously is limitations in the supply chain for certain EV components. I think batteries tend to be one of the big ones. So they were conservative with their estimations, but perhaps even events of the last year, which I know everybody can relate to, has also been a stimulus towards EV adoption.
Yeah, absolutely.
People's lives are changing for sure, and accelerating as well in the way that they're changing.
Yeah, like I said about regulation. So we kind of know, and it's maybe a bit dry and a bit nerdy, but maybe it just put some perspective in it. Is, you know, a lot of people would have heard about, you know, fines for emissions and fines for CO2. And, you know, we know that's kind of around this, you know, we need to get to 95 grams.
The magic
grams
number.
This, 95 grams this, 95 grams that, 95 euros for every gram you're over 95, you know, all the 95s. But actually, by 2025, I think it goes to, is it 81 grams?
Well, you and I both know that value is a challenge to reach with anything that burns a fossil fuel.
Yep. And I think the manufacturers are waking up to that, right? Is yes. The X5 PHEV, I think, has got a 24 kilowatt hour battery.
Like, just tiny huge for a car of that size.
Oh, no. Come on now.
24 kilowatt hour battery. I suppose for a PHEV, you're right. Yes.
For a PHEV, yeah.
Yes.
But I think it's good for, 40 miles, which is maybe, you know, it's not an EV by any chance, but it's big compared to other PHEVs in the market.
I'm a bit cynical of PHEVs, Pete. Honestly speaking, I don't believe that anything that has a tailpipe on the car is the right way to go.
Fair point. I'm sure there'll be some others that argue, but, you know, as we said, there's two parts to regulation. Is, you know, sadly in Europe, I think the regulations are pushing that, as you say, to have a pure engine, it's just not going to be possible without a lot of electrification, and the regulations will slowly kill it. But, you know, I think even now they're talking about Euro 7, which has been discussed for a long while, and that's, you know, over time we're just bolting more and more stuff onto the engine, right?
Correct.
You know, everything is turboed now, and diesels have got AdBlue, and you know, look into the future, maybe we're going to have something to heat up the cat, or we're going to have AdBlue on petrol as well. And it just gets to the point where unless you really want an engine, then you're not going to be able to build it. But actually, again, from a customer point of view, as we said, you know, COVID's been a shocking time for most people, if not everyone. But actually, EVs have grown in that time. It's, you know,
yes, the market trend has been down, but the EV segment, whether it be, you know, B, C, D platform in size, has just grown exponentially in the last few months. Adoption has been crazy, which is great to see, I hasten to add.
Yeah, of course. And again, it's, you know, one thing people, I think, forget sometimes is, you know, a new car's on the road for a long while, 15, 20 years. So the quicker we can get people into EVs, the better, really. But it's just interesting from an OEM point of view. So we were talking earlier about VW's Power Day, which, so much to talk about. But the key thing is, I think they're seeing the future is actually, you know, regulatory burden is one thing, but actually customers are just going to demand EVs. You know, especially in cities and countries now where we know the writing's on the wall, right? I think is it Norway and the Netherlands is 25.
Yep.
You know, here in Old Blighty it's 2030 with an asterisk, probably 2035 for actually, you know, pure BEVs. So, you know, and one of the things I think a lot of people aren't talking about is, you know, everyone buys cars on finance, right?
Correct. And
how finance works in the most part of these PCP deals is you get a guaranteed value. Well, how's a manufacturer in 2029, for instance, going to sell you a car on finance and be able to guarantee the value of that car? Who in, let's say, you know, someone buys a car in 2029, gets a 4-year deal. It's not unusual.
Yep.
And then in 2032, you come back with your petrol car. How much is that petrol car going to be worth in the second-hand car market?
7/10 you know, of NAF all.
Is that a good estimate?
Yeah.
But yeah,
well,
the point
to be
is,
honest, as a consumer, it wouldn't be a very bright move, would it, to buy a combustion engine vehicle, the preceding years before that cut-off date, particularly on finance.
And the manufacturers are not daft, right? Either they all have massive finance and banking arms that are associated with them. They don't want the liability of having all these cars coming back off finance deals. What is it? 80-90% of cars are financed these days. Yeah. They don't want to have that, those assets or, debt burden on their books, and they can't flog them because ultimately, on a finance deal, unless it's a HP, a hire purchase, if it's one of these contract plans, PCPs that a lot of people buy cars on, the manufacturer's on the hook for it all. So, they're wanting really to introduce EVs as quick as they can. I think there's a few feet draggers and Toyota. Talk about Toyota.
Well, I'm sure that will be probably another episode, but they have released an EV in the last week.
An EV?
Yeah, BZ, I believe it is.
Sorry to interrupt. Was that another segue, Pete?
It wasn't, no, but we'll leave that for another day. But that Toyota and their adoption of EV is something I'm sure we'll get into at some point.
And I think even, over the other side of the pond in the US, I think, was it GM that said they're only going to make battery electric vehicles by 2035?
Yeah, and Ford, I think, certainly in Europe, are not interested in carrying on combustion technologies. And a few other manufacturers have said they're just going to cease all R&D activity on certainly ICE engines, petrol engines.
Yeah, I think that was one of the things. Absolutely.
Don't flog that dead horse.
No, I think it was Audi's press conference or annual statement. Was it today or yesterday? I think they've said or reiterated again that they're not looking to develop new engines. They'll keep their existing engine lineup limping along, I suppose, and they'll keep updating them and tweaking them. But actually, in terms of developing,
keep bolting bits on it to make it compliant with the various regulations until it. There's no more space to add anything else, and they'll just cease, I'm sure.
Yeah, and we can see that all the time, right? With batteries, the cost of batteries is constantly falling, and actually, as much as we're now really good after 100, 120 years of building engines, actually, the cost of building engines is going up, not down. So it's the reverse of what we're seeing in the battery space.
Yeah. If I remember rightly, I read an article somewhere a few years back. There was a decision to be made back in the early days of the automotive industry, whereby I think it was Ford was trying to make their decision as to whether or not they went with a battery solution or a combustion solution. And obviously range was one of the talking points, but also they considered that ICE was a better business model because parts would need replacing. So your chains and your belts and your oils, etc., would be a good revenue over the life of the vehicle. But we've done full circle now when we're back to EVs, fortunately, which are better for the consumers. But I think the manufacturers are looking at ways of maintaining that revenue stream, whether it be through software updates or subscription services for those vehicles. They are available now.
Yeah, as you say, it sounds really cynical, right, and a diabolical scheme. But as you say, there's so many friction parts and lubricants and fluids and whatever that need changing, and filters that need changing, and etc. And we know, and people I guess should kind of know is, from an automotive point of view, the dealerships or the franchise dealerships that actually sell your cars, they don't really make money on cars. They make money on after sales. They make money on servicing and warranty work and recalls and floor mat here and there. They don't really make money on selling your cars. They make money on that service work. So, well, yeah. So as you say, that's maybe been one of the hindrances, right? Is I think GM, what was it recently with Cadillac, right? There were some dealers where they were asked to invest in going all electric because Cadillac's going to be an all electric brand, we're told, in the not too distant future. And some dealers just sort of went, no, we're not doing it. And part of that is maybe they weren't very successful locations for Cadillac. And another part is from a franchise dealer point of view, if they know their business is in servicing predominantly, maybe they're a bit apprehensive about a shift to EVs, which I think is something that we need to overcome. And as you say, is looking at different revenue streams for EVs.
Well, again, this is probably another future topic of discussion, but the way in which a vehicle such as an EV is sold in the future, the way it is maintained and looked after, presumably is going to change as well. It can't remain traditional forever. There's going to need to be a shift, and perhaps what you're describing is a resistance to that change, because certain traditional industries don't want to make that investment, that shift. They're going to need to keep up, or they're simply going to die.
Yeah, I mean, me and you were on a personal level have been into EVs for a while. I think even before we owned them, we saw them as a good move, even if it was just cool or it was a bit geeky and it was new tech, and But actually, maybe up until 2 years ago, maybe there was still a genuine question mark about EVs, or is some sort of really clean ice actually better overall? And that's well to wheel, and that kind of discussion is again one for the list of future topics. But actually, the writing's on the wall now. Really, 19th century was coal, 20th century was oil, and 21st century is going to be electricity. The companies that can't see that are just going to fall by the wayside.
Absolutely.
So I've not got a good segue, but I think we should move on to the third topic, because I've got a controversial opinion.
Have you? Do tell.
ID4.
Yes.
I'm not that impressed.
It depends how you look at it.
That was a big sigh.
Yeah, because how to express this? I actually agree with you. I think it's a bit underwhelming. And let's start by saying from the outset that I've not seen this in the metal. I've not touched it. I've not driven it. And all I've been able to do is experience press launch, the various videos that have been released on YouTube, and I don't feel inspired. I have no doubt that it will be reliable. It's a VW. It's likely to do everything it says on the tin, but it's not that special, is it?
I think one of the things, and it's really cliche, right, is one of Volkswagen's many good PR lines is for the millions, not the millionaires. And as much as there's going to be other versions, the launch car's £60,000.
Is this the first edition? So here in the UK, I think the only one currently available is the first edition, which is a 77 kilowatt hour battery. But for that price, I think it's just missing a lot of key features that you would just expect for that sort of money. Now, call me picky, and it's not something I necessarily need, but for that amount of money, I would expect an electric tailgate, especially on that size of car, and it just doesn't have one. To me, that's strange.
Yeah, as you say, we're both commenting without actually having set in a car, but it's quite easy to look at some of the stuff, as you say, that's just missing, and it just feels like there's been some penny pinching. But I think it's hard to justify, as you say, electric tailgates now, especially in crossovers, is just ubiquitous, right?
Absolutely.
Whether it's throwing the dog in, or the shopping, or waving your foot even under the bumper to open it if your hands are full of children or shopping, it's just expected. And when you look at some of the interior stuff, it just doesn't. I don't think it's very VW, if I'm honest with you.
I think actually it's reminiscent also of the ID3. So the ID3, the ID range, VW have clearly had to throw a lot of investment at this very quickly to develop those cars in the time they have, following Dieselgate over the last few years. I mean, credit to them to have done it in such a short space of time, but it's obvious where they have had to hold back on the investment to try and keep the overall price of the vehicle down for the consumer. And I'm struggling to get over it. The interior is clearly littered with hard plastic. And again, some of the features just missing that you'd expect.
Yeah, you're right. And as you say, to be fair, it's the launch car, and the launch car is always expensive, but 60 grand for this kind of car, like, it's bigger than a Tiguan slightly, but it's not massively so. For all intents and purposes, I'm sure Volkswagen wouldn't thank us, but it's an electric Tiguan. Let's call it what it is. But it's 60 grand, and the Tiguan, once you spec it in the real world, is not a cheap car, but it's not 60 grand, and it just seems, this is a family car, right? It's for taking the kids to school, it's for going on summer holidays, it's for putting the dog in the boot and going for a walk on weekends, and people with outdoorsy lifestyles, unlike us. And it's just, I struggle to see how families buy a 60 grand car.
Yeah, I mean, this is going to be parked in a showroom alongside a Tiguan. You're going to have a challenge to convince somebody who's not necessarily an eco adopter to buy this over the Tiguan equivalent.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the things, my bugbears that I've been reading about, and it just seems crackers to me, is, that Tiguan comparison, I think, is important because we need to lower the barrier of entry to EVs as much as we can. And one of the key things, not just price, is charging. And of course, Volkswagen in the not too distant past did some bad things and were forced to build Electrify America in the US, right? And equally in Europe, they had a partnership with quite a list of manufacturers now for Ionity. And
which is
both
successful.
Of those...
Let's not beat around the bush. Ionity is quite a good and robust charging network.
But what I was coming to is both of those networks offer the ISO number. I can't remember what it is. I'll have to edit that one in. But they offer plug and charge, right? Similar to Tesla, you roll in, you plug it in. This doesn't have it. And it's just like,
no.
Why? Like, you they're saying it's going to come by software update, etc. But, the Ford Mustang Mach-E has plug and charge. So it can use basically a Volkswagen network in the US, even though there's a Chinese wall. But Electrify America is Volkswagen. Again, let's call it what it is. You can pull up in your Ford and plug and charge, and equally you can do the same in Europe with Ionity and do plug and charge. But then Volkswagen's own cars today don't have it, and it just seems like a massive miss.
Do you think it's software related? Because it's not really been a secret that they have had some challenges with their onboard software and indeed off-board connected services. They've had some struggle there. And from what I'm seeing, this car is no exception. Their voice to text and their, I don't want to say Alexa, but their in-car Alexa is not as effective as it could be.
Yeah, no doubt it's to do with software, but it just seems a miss that when they've invested to build the infrastructure is constantly being criticised. But if the infrastructure actually does do plug and charge to launch a car that's built basically with the same money as the infrastructure and not have that feature that your competitors are using, it just seems a bit of an own goal, really. So hopefully they can fix it quite quickly. But I don't know.
They'll get there.
I wanted to like the car, but no, very true.
I don't know. With that amount of money, I probably wouldn't be buying that car. On paper, a lot of the statistics don't stack up to. I don't want to be the cliche person and say Model Y, but it doesn't stack up, and it's a more expensive car.
Yeah, I think that'll be the litmus test, right? Is we don't have the Model Y, yet in Europe. We're told that's only going to come out once the Berlin Gigafactory's up and running. Yeah. But we'll have to see. And I think once that car is localized and on the market in Europe, I think it'll be a challenging competitor for Volkswagen, not just from a brand point of view, but as you say, from a specs point of view. You know, it goes further, it charges quicker.
The charging network, the supercharger network that Tesla has is second to none, really, in the way it operates and its reliability.
It just works.
Yeah. So, I think the ID4 is available today in the UK, certainly. Does this now lose the government grant, this car? I guess it does, as it's over a certain amount of British pounds. It's now no longer going to get. Yeah. It's no longer going to get government grant here in the UK, which I think today was reduced. That's certainly the amount of incentive that you get, but also it's below a certain threshold on vehicle price as well. So sadly, that incentive is starting to slowly disappear, which is a shame, I think.
Yeah, so it's been dropped from, 3,000?
To 2.5, that's right.
To 2.5. I get the argument, I think it used to be, was it $5,000 back in the day? And the argument was always, why should the taxpayer fund for, middle-class Henry to have an electric train station car? Mm-hmm. And I get that perspective, right? But, with any new technology or new endeavor, you have to incentivize it. And sadly, that always starts at the top of the market and trickles down. But the thing I don't like about this, is they've lowered the maximum price point, I think, to 35,000. So if it's more than 35,000,
you get nothing.
Pounds, you get nothing.
Yeah,
I get that, because that goes with the former argument, right? Of, if you're buying a car at 35 grand plus, do you really need taxpayer support? But that seems contrary to then dropping the grant. So it's on one hand, you're saying, we want to save the money so that we can support people that maybe need that assistance to get into an EV. But then at the same time, they're like, we're also dropping the grant. At the very least, it's keep the grant the same, but lower the maximum amount. Yeah. So very strange. And it's, I think the government's having a few problems at the minute, because they're making all these outlandish statements here in the UK about, net zero and the green recovery. And obviously we're hosting, I think, COP this year. And the lowering grants for EVs, and there's discussion about a new coal mine. It just seems very, very odd, but we'll see what's happening.
Voices,
we'll see what happens, but
absolutely. So you wouldn't buy an ID4 then, Pete, with your own money?
Oh, full disclosure, I've got to admit, like, I'm a fully paid up member of the cult of Elon, but my money, I'd probably hang out for a Model Y. And,
but for some people, this could be a very worthy offering. Those that have always had VWs in their lives would only buy a VW. Those who have traditionally respected the mark will stay with it. Perhaps those of a certain generation will also consider going with something they know and potentially love over a new disruptor. And let's be honest, Tesla is just about still a disruptor. It's been around for 10 years or so. But there'll be people that want to stick with the traditional brands.
No, I think that's a really good point. I think it goes back to the first topic, right, on the Taycan Cross Turismo, is people will buy it because it's an EV, but there'll be a lot of people that are buying it because it's got the Porsche crest on. And as you say, with the ID4 and the ID3, or the ID family at large, is there will be loyal VW customers that have always bought VWs, always want to, but actually now maybe they're more eco-conscious, or they want to buy an EV, or they want to try it, but they want to try an EV that's got a VW badge on it. So, as you say, it can't be a bad thing.
it's a step in the right direction, and I still have the respect of VW for making that leap.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the things in the Power Day presentation, which was a bit long. I think it was 2 hours long. Is they're looking pretty much they have the MEB platform, which all these ID family cars are based on, and actually they're going to push further. I think with Project Artemis, I think it's called, and.
Well, let's be honest,
than for some...
VW's strength has always been their carry across mentality. They are the masters of engineering a component that can go across their models, across their ranges, and keep the costs down. So the MEV platform is certainly a step in the right direction from that sense.
Yeah, absolutely. I think if you look today, one of the combustion ones I think is MQB, and I think it must be like 70 or 80 cars that are using varying generations of that one platform. And I think with their latest announcement, actually, if you go take a look, is they're almost doubling down on that and actually saying from a group point of view with all the brands within Volkswagen, say at Skoda, VW cars, VW vans, Scania, as well as some of the more high performance orientation, they're looking at 80% are going to use a common battery pack, and of course have some edge cases. I would imagine, Bugatti, Lamborghini, Porsche maybe will use something a bit more specific, but actually 80% of the products from 2030, I think they announced, are going to use a common cell and battery type. So actually, as you say, they're masters today. We know this. There's so many products that are just almost rinse and repeat. And they're doubling down on that because, as we know, scale is king, right? And that's at the minute why Tesla are almost are leading, because for years they've been ploughing money into building cells at scale.
100%.
Interesting to see, but yeah.
Do we think that's an appropriate juncture then?
Podcast. Yeah, that's a good way to round out.
I think so.
Soon to be podcast.
Yes. So I believe you're now going to take this download from Stereo, which you can listen to podcasts live on. And please do tune in for future episodes. As we say, you can listen live, ask questions, which is one of the unique features of Stereo. But we're now going to take a cut of this and drop it onto YouTube so you can listen at leisure through our YouTube channel. Is that correct, Pete?
And I think we've linked everything. So all the various PlugBox channels, Instagram and Facebook, and as you say, YouTube, are all in there. And in due course, we'll put the podcast link in for listening back to as well. But yeah, I think that's a good place to end.
Great. Okay. Let's finish there then, Pete.
Cool. Speak next time.
Take care. Thank you.
Cheers.
Bye-bye.